tribe, and welcome to lesson 18 of Deep Body Wisdom. It feels like it's been a very, very long time since I last recorded a video for you, and in actual fact, it's been 2 whole months for me, even though you received lesson 17 just 2 weeks ago, because of course I had to pre-record all those lessons because of having to be away in Germany for 3.5 weeks to do Tribe Live and to do the Harold Kautz event. So that was all pre-recorded. So for me, it's been a very, very long time. And it's also been a time of a lot of growth and healing and learning and transformation, as I shared in our live Zoom call this past Sunday. A lot of the ideas that I've had about not being enough and not having enough and having to always give more and try harder and do more, a lot of those ideas have really been challenged and have been laid to rest. And so it's actually quite appropriate that we're moving into this lesson today, because this lesson 18, is all about higher wisdom, higher intelligence, the deeply intuitive knowing form of intellect. And I think that's sort of what has been operating for me a lot more over the past several weeks and months. So that's today, we're talking about the higher mind. Now, as you know, the past several lessons, in fact, the past couple of months, we've been doing the hard work, the heavy spiritual lifting, right? It's all the work going deep into our shadow lands, looking at our triggers, our traumas, our stuck patterns, our blockages, our emotional problems, our issues with people, with the world, with relationships, with life, with ourselves. And this has all been the hard work. And I really do salute you for continuing to show up for yourself, for continuing to do the work. And I do hope that as you have been doing this work in your relationships, in your pods, in your families, in life, that things have started to become easier, that you've started to experience a little bit more ease, a little bit more grace, a little bit more joy. The things have just become lighter in general in your life. Because as we do this work, that does start to happen. In the beginning, we're dealing with a lot of stuff. I mean, often it's stuff that's been there for lifetimes. And certainly in this lifetime, from our early childhood. And so the heavy stuff is in the beginning, which is actually almost a pity, because we can be put off by the beginning and going like, oh my goodness, this is just too hard. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. But honestly, as we stick with it, it does get lighter and it does get easier. So I hope that you've been starting to experience that in your own life. And I hope that you're starting to reap the rewards of doing this work. Because in reality, you are going to continue to do this work for the rest of your life. This work actually never ends. As I've said so many times before, how do we know that the work is over, that we're done? Well, the fact that we're still here means that the work is not over and we are not done. So we will continue to do this work for the whole rest of our life in this reality. And for future lifetimes in this reality, we will continue to do this work. So we need to make peace with that fact, and also to realize that it does get easier and it does get lighter. So as you know, in Deep Body Wisdom, we have spoken a lot about triggers. But I came across a concept yesterday which really made my heart sing. And that is the concept of a glimmer. Now, the glimmer is actually the exact opposite of a trigger. So where a trigger is a small little incident, a happening, a person, something which causes a massive emotional explosion or a massive emotional response or outburst in you, way out of proportion to the trigger, which is generally a really tiny little thing. A glimmer is a small little thing that happens in your life that causes a massive explosion of joy and peace and happiness and just a general sense of bliss and wonder in our lives. And so I'm hoping as we continue to do this work, there will be fewer and fewer triggers and more glimmers. So let's set that as an intention for ourselves. And of course, the more we look out for the glimmers, the more and more of them we will actually notice and see. So pay attention in your life, let yourself be that lab rat in the laboratory of your own life. And begin to notice those little tiny moments which cause you so much joy and so much bliss. It could be something simple like the first taste of your coffee in the morning, or the smile of your child, or a rainbow, or just simply those moments which creep up on us. There's nothing that seems to have happened in our external world, and we're just suddenly overwhelmed with beautiful feelings of joy and peace and gratitude. Look out for those moments, and when they come, celebrate them and be so grateful for them. Those beautiful glimmers in life that make it all worthwhile. So as I've said, for the past several lessons, we've been working at the layer of the mental/emotional body. You can see our model is up on the screen right now. But now in this lesson, we are moving into a deeper layer, which is the layer of the wisdom or the intellectual body, the body of the higher intellect. Remember that I've said to you that we have the so-called koshas or sheaths of the soul. And the idea is that they are kind of nested inside of each other. These sheaths cover the true essence of who we are in this reality. Each of these different sheaths or bodies or koshas, okay? And it's sort of a little bit like the idea of the matryoshka dolls. You know those little Russian dolls, the one nested inside of the other. So that's how these sheaths work. So we are now looking at the sheath of the wisdom or the intellectual body. So the wisdom or the intellectual body is said to be the second covering of the soul. So the first one in this reality is the bliss body, which we will get to in an upcoming lesson. But the second one is the wisdom body. And remember, each layer that we go in deeper and deeper is at a much higher frequency and a much more subtle vibration. So it is said that there is an ancient voice which is much older than your fears, your dramas, your traumas, your limited ideas of self, your emotions, your thoughts. It is much more ancient than that. And this is the layer of the wisdom or the intellectual body or the higher intellect. As we begin to tap into our wisdom body or the body of our higher intellect, and we begin to balance that body, we begin to find that our mundane lives as small little human beings trying to live on this planet and work and create families and lives, those lives begin to balance and harmonize with our higher wisdom. And in fact, they begin to merge. So we find ourselves, we're beginning to live a life which is far more filled with purpose, with meaning, with spirit, with magic, with inspiration, with creativity. Our actions become far more aligned with our higher selves. And in fact, we begin to realize that we actually are our higher selves that are expressing into this reality via this ego vessel or this human body, this human life, this personality that we are. But you might be thinking now, but hang on, I can't tap into my wisdom body now because I'm still busy dealing with blockages. I'm still doing the trauma work and the processing work and the emotional release work. And indeed, we all are, as I said before. That work continues for the rest of our lives. So how then can we tap into this wisdom body or the higher bodies when we're still doing that work? Well, there's absolutely no problem with that. We can actually be working at various levels at the same time. There's no problem. We can be working at the level of our physical body, making better choices about food and about what we drink and about exercise and about what we do with our physical body. We can be working on our energetic body. We can be working on our mental body and our emotional body, all at the same time that we're learning to tap into our wisdom body and even our bliss body. There's no problem with that. And in fact, these different processes actually support and enhance each other. And as we do the work, we gradually begin to find that imperceptibly at first, the frequency of our consciousness is raising. And sometimes it's not imperceptible. Sometimes we have a giant leap in one moment, a moment of inspiration and awareness, and we're like, wow. And we realize that we are at a whole new level in our lives. And that is absolutely wonderful when that happens. But for some of us, it's just a stepwise, gradual increase in our frequency. And sometimes it feels like we're not making any progress at all. But trust me, we really are. We just have to stick with the process, and we will be making progress, and we will be raising our frequency. So it is quite possible for us to begin to tap into this wisdom body, as I say, while we are still doing the other work. There is no conflict there whatsoever. And as we begin to tap into this wisdom body, and as we do the work, we begin to find that people and situations and triggers and relationships which were absolutely impossible for us to deal with in the past suddenly become easier. Suddenly we realize, oh, hang on, I couldn't have done that before. Look at me, wow. Or they just are filled with more ease and more grace and more beauty and more joy. And we will definitely find that. So I urge you, I keep saying this, but please keep showing up for yourself. Keep doing the work. And keep, as we are doing today, tapping into your wisdom body. So let's then talk about the wisdom body now, what it is and how we can tap into it. So most people in this world have been trained to believe and to trust external authorities far more than their own inner knowing. So we trust the experts, the doctors, the politicians, the experts in the field. We trust algorithms, computer algorithms. We trust social constructs, social media, far more than we trust our own inner discernment. And what happens then is this wisdom body or this inner knowing then atrophies because we're not trusting it, we're not listening to it, and then it slowly quietens down. We value cleverness over higher intelligence. We value the acquisition of facts and information over true knowing, over true wisdom. And then this wisdom body goes quiet. We can't hear its voice anymore. It's not that the capacity isn't there. That capacity is always there, but we have to tune into it. We have to learn to trust it. We have to learn to believe in that inner voice. We have to learn to listen deeply. It's valuing deep presence over doing, which is for me quite interesting because, as I've shared with you, this has actually been my process over the last couple of months, is actually valuing that inner knowing that I have rather than over the constant doing and giving more and more and more and not believing in my enoughness. So this is the exact opposite of that. It is actually tapping into that inner knowing and wisdom and believing and trusting that we have that inner capacity. And as we begin to tap into that inner knowing, we stop valuing quick fix answers as much, and we begin to actually honor the value of the question. It is said that every great question already contains the answer within it. And so when we are tapping into the wisdom body, we are prepared to sit with not knowing. We are prepared to sit with the question and allow it to be, and allow whatever is going to happen to just unfold. And we trust in that unfolding. It is a completely different approach to rushing out there, trying to find answers, asking ChatGPT or whoever for the answers, and then feeling like, okay, we have the certainty, we know what the answer is. And often that rushing for the quick fix or the quick answer actually shuts down such a huge world of value and richness and knowing and wisdom because we're rushing for certainty. Okay, so it's also this willingness to sit in deep presence, and deep presence with a question, and not rushing to find the answer to that question straight away. So tapping into the wisdom body, into intuition and knowing, it often doesn't feel like acquiring of knowledge or information or facts. It often feels more like a remembering. Anne speaks about the truth bell, which is in the middle chamber of your heart chakra. And when we hear truth, we resonate with that. Our truth bell is rung. We feel a resonance in our truth bell. And for me, tapping into the wisdom or the intuitive body feels a lot more like that. It feels like a remembering of something I've known forever, or I just forgot that I knew it. It feels much more like a remembering than an acquiring of facts. All right. Another thing I want to say about it is that when we are tapping into the wisdom body and the intuitive knowing, we have to be prepared to be wrong sometimes. We have to let go of our tight clench on the need for things to be true and to be right. Okay? We have to be prepared to dance. We have to be prepared to dance with our knowings, with our intuitions, with our wisdom body, and allow, instead of trying to pin things down to the truth, allow things to move. Because the more we pin it down like this, the more we actually close down that wisdom and that intuition and that knowing. And the more we allow it, the more we give it freedom, we give it spaciousness, we give it air to breathe, the more it will start to speak to us. So we have to be okay with being wrong sometimes. Wrong, okay? For example, I might get an intuition or a knowing about a friend of mine, and my intuition might tell me that that friend, that there's something not okay with them, even though they're telling me they're happy and they're fine and everything's all right. I have to be prepared to be wrong. I have to be prepared that if I share this with them, that they say, no, you're wrong. Everything is absolutely fine in my life. Okay? And that's fine. It's absolutely fine to be wrong. In fact, there's no such thing as wrong anyway, but that's a separate discussion. Often, particularly when we're sharing our truth about something with another person, they're not ready yet to actually hear that truth. And they're not able to take it on board. It might not be that you're actually wrong. It might just be something in the future, or it might be something that person's not able to hear. So I'd like to just go on a small tangent here and just say, I think it's really important that we don't take from people their opportunities to grow, their opportunities to discover for themselves what is necessary and what they need to discover on their journeys. So I think the temptation is often there when somebody is expressing something to go, oh yeah, I know, I did this and this is what I know about you, or to give them unsolicited information about themselves. And I really would urge you to resist that. Resist that urge. What you can do instead is you can ask a person, you can say, I have some information. I'm prepared for it to be wrong. I'm prepared for it to not be true for you, but I have some information for you. Are you willing to hear it, or are you open to it? And then if they say yes, by all means, share it. But if they say no, then leave it, right? Don't take from other people their opportunity to grow. Don't take from other people their opportunity to find their way themselves. Because if we are just giving somebody the way, then really they haven't found it themselves, and it is not nearly as valuable to them than if they found their own way. So what then is the wisdom body? So the wisdom body is that layer, or that higher layer of consciousness that knows without thinking, that understands without analysis, that perceives the truth beyond the limitations of our rational mind, or our physical body, or our emotional body, or any of the limitations of this ego vessel. It is the part of our mind which it sort of forms the bridge between our thinking, mental mind, and the higher self, right? So it's that bridge between the two. The wisdom body is all about intuition, insight, intrinsic wisdom. It's this kind of knowing that we have without knowing where that knowing comes from. And I think we've probably all had an experience of that. I remember when I was working in the corporate world, I was on a business trip, and it was a grueling trip. I had been to several countries in several days. I was absolutely exhausted. And I caught a flight from Verona to Amsterdam, but the flight only arrived, I think, at like 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night. And I arrived at Amsterdam airport, and I got on a train to take me to my hotel where I was going to sleep for the night. And the trains are obviously very empty at that time of the night, the morning. And I was sitting there in an empty cabin, and I had my suitcase and I had my small bag which had my passport and my air tickets and my money and my list of my schedule that I had for the next several days, and my hotel reservations, and absolutely everything was in that small bag. And we stopped at a station just before Amsterdam main station, and there was somebody who came up to the window and was knocking at the window and seemed to be in a huge panic and like a lot of stress. So I got up, leaving my suitcase and this bag on the seat. I got up just about 2 meters to attend to this person, and they were trying to explain all kinds of things to me to the window. And I was listening to them, and something said, here's a problem. And I turned around, and my small bag was gone. So this is obviously somebody who was working together with another person. And you know, you never know how you're going to respond in that situation till you're in that situation. I knew that I was absolutely screwed. I didn't even know where my hotel was that I was going to sleep that night. And without my passport and my money and everything, I was absolutely screwed, honestly. And I didn't even think, it didn't go via my mental thought processes at all. I just knew. I turned to my left. There's this big button that you press to get into the next carriage. I pressed the button and there's that area between two carriages. I just knew the person was there. I pressed the button, the doors opened, and there he was standing, this huge big guy, and he had my bag in his arms, and I didn't even think. I just grabbed my bag from him, and the doors closed, and there I was in the carriage and thinking, oh my goodness, what have I done? What have I actually done? You know, am I at danger now here in this train on my own? There's this huge big guy, he's going to come after me. And I just had a knowing it was fine. And I was fine. It was absolutely fine. But there was something about, there was just like an inner knowing, there was an intuition, there was a knowing what to do in that moment. And I've had several such moments in my life where things have just happened afterwards. I've gone, what? How did I know to do that? How did I know where to go? How did I know what to do? And these are all examples of the higher mind operating, really helping us, this little ego self that doesn't know, and is so fearful and vulnerable, and it is actually the higher mind stepping in to help. I've heard it said that the higher mind is sort of like the executive function of the mind. So a little bit like when you've got horses drawing a chariot, right? The horses are your regular ego mind, right? And then the one who's driving the horses, the person driving the wagon, is actually the higher mind. So it's the executive function. And so it is really important that we develop that capacity for the executive function, because if we silence it and shut it down, as I said earlier, we really are losing out an amazing, incredible resource that can actually help us so much in our lives. If that higher mind of ours is silent, or it hasn't been developed, or it's for some reason obscured, there can be actual chaos in our system, right? Chaos in our thinking, chaos in our emotions, chaos in our energetic body, just like really chaos, and it can be really, really disruptive. We really do need that higher mind, that functioning, that, you know, the one who's actually driving the wagon. Otherwise, you know, if you're expecting those horses to drive that wagon by themselves, it is actually chaos. But that higher mind is absolutely able to see things from a broader perspective. And as I said before, it's the bridge between the lower mind and the higher self. So it is able to give us a broader perspective. So if the lower mind is in charge, and you know, the cravings of the ego and of the physical body and all of this are in charge, we then can maybe get into a state, let's say for example, where we overeating just because we have these cravings and it's yummy and we just want to, and you know, it's a little bit like the inmates are in charge of the prison. Maybe that's a bad analogy. The inmates are in charge of the madhouse, maybe even worse. But if the higher mind comes into play, then the higher mind can make choices based upon a longer perspective, or based upon what is to the good of the entire construct that we are, right? So the higher mind might make a choice to actually eat healthily, or to make choices which are healthy for the individual as a whole, that has a longer term impact. So I'm not just making the immediate choice, I want to have this piece of cake right now and I'm going to have it because it's yummy and I just want it. But the higher mind's going, is that congruent with our overall goal for where we're going? We're trying to be healthier, live a healthier life, have a healthier body, ultimately raise the frequency of our consciousness. The higher mind can then take an executive decision and say, no, we're not going to eat this piece of cake now. We're going to wait, or we're going to make a different choice about what we're going to eat, or we're not going to just fall into a meaningless sexual gratification. We are going to make different choices, or whatever it might be. So we can see how important that higher mind is, and how important that higher mind functioning is for the health of the whole organism. This higher mind can also begin to notice and pay attention to the stories that we tell ourselves, right? How many of those are actually true, right? You know, I am victimized and people are mean and the world's a horrible place. And so a lot of the distorted thinking the higher mind can see through the distorted thinking. It can see through these unhelpful stories and narratives that we tell ourselves, and we can slowly allow those to release their grip upon us. So we can see, as we tap into the higher mind, into the higher knowing, into the wisdom body, we actually are raising the frequency of our consciousness, which obviously makes sense, because I've said every one of those successive sheaths or bodies are operating at a level of high frequency. So we're raising ourselves to a higher frequency when we are beginning to empower that wisdom body, when we're beginning to tap into that wisdom body, when we're beginning to operate from the perspective of the wisdom body rather than the perspective of the lower ego mind. So we know that the physical body is nourished by food and water and by exercise. We know the mental body is nourished by information and facts. But the wisdom body is nourished by any practices which actually foster silence, that clear the clutter, that clear the chaos. So things like meditation, yoga, pranayama, a focused, any exercise where we're doing some kind of a focused, something where we focus very clearly, or when we get into flow, that really fosters the function and really balances out the wisdom body. Okay. Any activities that really connect us to a sense of something greater than ourselves, right? So, for example, if we're spending time in nature, or if we're spending time in some kind of devotional activity, or we're often doing creative endeavors where we are actually, the ego mind just goes to sleep a little bit, and then that higher mind can come up. So these are all practices which allow us to tap into the wisdom of that higher mind. And, I would like to just say something about that. The higher mind, or the wisdom body, it often speaks to us in various different ways. And some of the ways that we've been experiencing in deep body wisdom are actually via the body. So it's a little bit of an enigma, but the wisdom body can actually speak to us through the physical body. So we can get a sensation in the physical body, which is actually telling us, giving us a knowing or an intuition or a feeling about something, which we wouldn't otherwise know. The higher mind or the wisdom body can speak to us in images. It can speak to us in just knowings or intuitions or visions or something like that. So all of this is just interconnected. But whenever we have like a feeling, like it's a remembering, it's like a knowing something that I always knew, and it's resonating with the truth bell, whether that's in the body, in the physical body, in the energetic body, sometimes even in the emotional body, or even in the mental body, right? The higher mind can speak in all those different ways, but it's something that resonates with the truth bell. It's like a knowing or an intuition that I wouldn't otherwise have known, in whatever way that expresses itself. Usually that's the function and that's the operation of the wisdom body. And then it's time to really pay attention, to notice, to really listen, because as I've said before, the value in that is immeasurable. Arne often talks about the concept of genius. And in this world we have a subverted idea of what genius is. We think it's someone with a high IQ. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth, right? I mean, IQ is such a social construct, and it's so tied to culture and language and gender and social structures. That's not what genius is at all about. Genius is basically when you are in direct contact or direct communion with your divine self, with your higher self. That is what genius is about. And so as we start to listen to this wisdom body, to this higher mind, we start to have these moments of genius, these moments of knowings, of intuition, of flashes of brilliance, of information about what we need to do in this world, things we need to create, which are truly genius. And the more and more we actually listen to this wisdom body, the more and more those moments of genius actually are. So we are going to be talking about genius in an upcoming lesson, but I just wanted to mention it now in the context of the wisdom body. If you really do want to learn to begin to tap into your genius, we first start to tap into the wisdom body. And I am at this moment tapping into my wisdom body and into my intuition and my knowing, and I just get a sense that I need to stop talking now. You can talk all you like about something, and that's interesting or not, but actually you need to have an experience of it. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm not going to carry on for a long lesson like I normally do. I don't think that's necessary. What I would like you to do now is to go to the home play exercises, and I'm going to give you some practical experiences of how you can tap into your own wisdom body. So let's go do that together now. And I will see you again in lesson 19. Bye-bye.